What's good, everybody? We're back at it again with another episode of the Youre Wrong Sir podcast. I am extremely excited about this episode. This is a guest I've been wanting on, but just trying to find the perfect time. And I think with this season, what I'm doing and the guests I'm having on, this is just an amazing person. So, Matt Lupi, a great friend of mine, thank you for hopping on. Matt's the host of the Define Success podcast, an intern for Grady Sports Agency, and a senior at Temple University. So, thank you for hopping on.
No, it's a pleasure. I've been listening for a long time, so it's good to finally be on as a guest. But you're doing great stuff, so it's a pleasure to join.
Yes, bro. You made me hype when we were on the call yesterday. And Matt was like, they were like, what's the high of your week? And Matt was like, it's gonna be on Your Wrong Sir podcast. I'm like, yes, bro. Hop on. I'm
Yep,
excited though.
me
And
too.
Joshua was texting us too, excited. So we got a couple people who are already excited to tune in and see this one. But just for those listening, I think this episode will be extremely fruitful. Matt is just, you'll learn about Matt, but Matt is like an inspiration for a lot of people on the team with his discipline and other things of that such. But if you're listening, please subscribe. Okay. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Press the subscribe button. So we're just gonna hop right into it and get straight to the content for y'all. You ready, Matt?
Let's do it.
All right. First question I got for you. For me, I just love painting the picture and like telling a story. So there's so much we're going to talk about because you're just an all-encompassing person with different things that I feel like just encompass who you are and what your values are. But my first question is, because we're going to break down a lot of different things that Matt's involved in and Matt's passionate about. But with all of those things we talk about, what is your intention? Like when it's all said and done, if you know, or where you are now, who do you want people to remember Matt Lupi as?
I think it's exactly that. Just remembering the name, leaving a legacy in
Mm,
everything that I do. So with that comes getting myself involved with things that are actually important to me and
mm,
that I can actually make an impact. It's not working a part-time job that it's just to make some extra money. It's actually
facts.
doing something, whether it's working for free, building
Mhm,
that sweat equity and getting experience to go into something bigger in the future. I think at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it's what is your family going to remember you as? What are your friends going to remember you as? What's your community? And really just build something that is sustainable for generations to come.
that's good, bro. I think that's kind of everybody's thing is really just to leave a legacy, but we're going to talk about how you plan to leave yours and things that you're doing right now to do that. And so I knew that I wanted to have you on a podcast, right? We had our call last week, our Thursday call last week, and we've been doing this thing. I also am working with Grady Sports Agency, so that's how me and Matt have cultivated this relationship. We were talking, and Joshua's just really been big on bonding with the team and learning more about each other and fun facts. And we always do like, what's one thing the team doesn't know about you that somebody else knows or whatever. And this question, which was really good by Joshua, what's your inflection point? And we were listening to everybody's, and I think yours shocked me the absolute most. I'm like, what? Like, I'm doubling back. I'm listening. I'm like, whoa. So we went around. Everybody's like, what's your inflection point? And for those who don't know what an inflection point is, it's kind of like a math term. So it can be you either going up, trending upward, and that point where it starts going down, or you're going down and that point where you start trending up. So it's that change. And Matt told me, first of all, I didn't even know that you weren't at Temple first.
Hmm.
So I was like, whoa, like it's too much. I don't know. And so his inflection point, I'll let you talk about it and your answers to the question, but something that shocked me was you wanted to be like a doctor at first. And you had a major which was related to medicine. And now we're talking about being an agent and all of these things within sports. So just talk to me, explain, the answer that you gave to us, but where you were at first and the transition from Temple from there.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest transition I've ever gone through so far.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it started out of a bit of ignorance because growing
Mm,
up, I always had an entrepreneurial mindset. I wanted to make money. And growing up, a lot of people think that the best ways to make money are to be a doctor or a lawyer. It seems like
facts.
that's the best route to go. So I think my mindset started becoming, okay, I want to be a doctor because I want to make money. And growing
Mm,
up, I was looking for ways to, okay, I have to enjoy science because of this. So I start taking more science classes in middle school, high school.
but it
And then,
wasn't really what you enjoy. You just felt like that was the thing.
yeah, it was like,
Mm,
it was cool to learn about, but I think it was like a forced passion. It
mm.
wasn't just like natural for me. So I enrolled at Pitt. Pitt was actually the only college that I applied to.
What?
I
That's
was
crazy.
I was sold. I was all in. And so growing up, I kind of so the whole background of like what kind of medicine I wanted to get into. I grew up with a family friend who was actually had sensory neural deafness. So basically, like it's not just hearing loss; like she couldn't hear. So
Mm,
basically, you can't fix that with a hearing aid. You have to go in and do a cochlear implant surgery, it's called, and kind of rewire and make sure that the neural impulses are sent to the brain.
mm,
So that was really interesting to me because all the way in elementary school, I'm seeing how that's impacting her family, impacting class in school, having like a someone doing sign
mm.
language. So that
To
was
be
really
that in
interesting.
tune at a young age though is amazing. Cause when
Thank
you're
you.
younger as a kid, we really like honestly don't pay attention to stuff like that. Those are the
Yeah.
kids that are probably getting bullied. Those are the kids that are probably being made fun of. But I commend you first of all, because to have that just the idea like, whoa, this is different, but I see this as a challenge for her and not just kind of like a laughing matter. That's dope,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So basically I saw it as an opportunity to help people and see the impact that it had. So I was like, okay, this is something that I want to get into. And in life, it's that kind of condition is pretty common with as you go through life throughout time. I mean, we're all plugged into headphones or we have noise
Right.
pollution in a city or construction, and hearing loss is a real thing. So that's originally what I thought I wanted to get into. And the end goal when it's all said and done of
Mhm.
like the 20-year process until you get into your specialty, I was
That's
like, okay,
crazy.
that's cool. Like I'll be happy.
Yeah.
So got into my first semester at Pitt. I was going to be a biology major on the pre-med track. And the first couple classes, those intro classes, I just didn't
Mm.
enjoy it. And those are supposed to be the ones that if you're gonna be a med school student, like you should knock those out of the park. And I was like, I can't do
Mm.
this. So I was meeting with my advisor and she was like, okay, you're gonna have to take like biochemistry 3 and physics
Look,
lab. And
I would have
I
been
was
like,
like,
I'm out.
yeah, I was like, this doesn't sound good. So 3 months into school, went home to my parents for Thanksgiving break
Mm.
and pretty much dropped a bomb on them because they thought for years that that's what I wanted to do. So it came with a little bit of struggle, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and a struggle for them as well because that's what they thought I was sold on. And all of a sudden, I'm talking about changing the major, and had a conversation with them, and I said, listen, after I would be unsatisfied with my work in these classes because I wasn't getting the straight A's like I was in high school,
Mm.
and it wasn't coming as easy as it used to. So I was like, every time I would get a bad grade on an exam, I would go right to sports. I'd either watch it or look up sports stuff. Like
Really? That's
that's
interesting.
where that's
And
where
that
my
was your
heart
safe
was.
place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself even like looking up sports careers and stuff. So I
Mm.
was like, this is it. So I told my parents that, and they were like, what? Like, because I think originally people are like, you want to work in sports? Like, are you gonna like sell tickets? Like, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean?
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So they were kind of skeptical at first. They became very supportive, which I appreciate that, but understandably so. And then my dad said to me, if you're going to do this right, because I was going to stay at Pitt because they didn't have anything sports related. I was just going to do
Mm.
business and like try to make it work. And he said, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. We're going to go visit Temple because they have a top 5 program or top 10 program. And you're going to consider transferring. I said, okay. And
Wow.
ended up at Temple. So,
Man, this is so much to unpack with just this part right here. I got like three
mhm.
questions. First thing though, so I came to U of I. I didn't want to be here initially, and I
Mhm.
figured out like I love it here. But sometimes like I see people coming to school and they're like, I'm a transfer student or I'm a junior.
Mhm.
And luckily it was after freshman year. I cannot imagine that because you have a lot going on your plate. You're trying to make new friends as a freshman. You're trying to lock into your classes. You're trying to figure out your passion. And then on top of that, you got to go apply for a whole new school just as if you're a senior again.
Yeah.
That is a lot. So talk to me just about that transfer process. And I would say, did you have any challenges with coming in, feeling welcome at Temple? Like, what was that transition and kind of that social scene?
I would think the hardest part was me leaving Pitt. A lot of my high school, I wouldn't say a lot of it, but like at least 20 kids from my graduating class of like
Oh, that's a lot.
700. So it was a small percentage, but you saw like that group around. Leaving them because two of my best friends, I lived with them freshman year, breaking the news to
Mm.
them and then eventually leaving in May was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Um, But once I got past that transition, going to Temple wasn't extremely difficult for me to adapt to. It was more of adapt to the mindset of I'm behind, because the people that
Ooh.
came in, the class of 2022 that came in when I was supposed to as a freshman, if I were to start at Temple, they have a year of classes, jobs, volunteer experience, internships possibly, and I have nothing. I'm
Mm.
like new to sports and they're already immersed into it. So I was like, dang, like I got to get to work. And we
Yeah.
have these volunteer hours that we're required to do until we graduate. They had a year head start. I still have to do the same amount in
And
3 years.
less. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So yeah, it was like, dang, like I'm behind. Like I can't mess around. Like I gotta find everything. So just a few examples. Like I volunteered for all four major sports teams in Philly: the Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies.
You lit.
Helped out with Temple Athletics, Penn Athletics, with the Temple lacrosse team. I worked for them for 3 years as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Went to a coaching role and then became a director of operations, which is only offered to grad students, but they made
Mm-hmm.
an exception for
You
me.
flexing, bro.
And then ended up working on the Eagles game day staff this fall. So
Mm-hmm.
when it's all said and done, looking back, everybody's experience is different, but looking at me compared to my peers, even coming in with a disadvantage, I think I had one of the best resumes out there.
Mm.
And I know everybody's different. They want different things, but I wouldn't want it any other way. Like I did everything that I wanted to do and I
Mm-hmm.
accomplished so much in 2.5 years. And granted, those 2.5 years, I was in in-person classes 2 times because of
Mm.
COVID. Like the odds were stacked against, but you just gotta find the opportunity.
That's good, bro. That's really good. And I want to circle back too, right? Because I got a couple questions just with this transfer. Of course, that's hard, but you persevered and
Mhm.
you kind of didn't complain and allow for that experience to be good for you. But something that's really interesting to me, a lot of African American households and even like Nigerian household, things like that, we always hear our culture emphasizing like you got to go to school because that's the only way you can make it. Right.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't have that entrepreneurial spirit because they're afraid. And I think a misinterpretation sometimes, and I don't know if this can be just my ignorance or anything, but sometimes we see other people or whites or people who are different races than us. And it's like, they're more open to having their children do anything. So it's really interesting to hear you say you came from a background also where it's like, hey, if you don't go to school, it's out of there. And if you're not a lawyer, a doctor, or this or that, like we literally associate that with other ethnicities and cultures outside of yours. And so I'm just that was really like eye opening for me because I've actually never ever heard that from anyone outside of my race. And yeah, I'm just really curious with your parents and the upbringing. What do they do? Like, when did that set into your mindset that like I have to be a lawyer, I have to be a doctor?
Yeah, so I think that was more like personal and societal than my
Mm,
parents. My parents would always be supportive, like no matter what I did.
okay.
But I think it was me at a young age just figuring out, and we can get to like that whole stuff later if we want. But I think me just at a young age being like, I want to make money. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I want to do. Like then I
Yep.
was like, okay, like I see like the doctor driving to the doctor's office in like a nice car. Like,
I was
oh
the
damn.
same too, bro. I literally always tell people this. I used to go when I was younger and have like a little notebook. I wrote everything down. I still do
Yeah.
it. And I used to write down, okay, what are the top schools? And I used to write down all Ivy Leagues like Harvard. I
Mhm.
used to write down Cornell, everything. And I used to look up like the required GPA and what you need to have on ACT. I'm like 10, bro. Why am I looking this stuff up on top of that? Like what? But I also used to go online and look up the top paying jobs,
Mm,
and it will always be doctor, and it will
yep.
always be lawyer. So it's so interesting how we start off with like ignorance because we're just trying to do what we think society will tell
Mhm.
us to do because we're children. And the older we get, we have realizations like you said, it's not for me. I
Yeah.
realized I want to be a sports agent. Take an agent academy. I'm like, this is right here. This is not for me. So
Mhm.
it's really crazy how things work out.
Yeah, and it's like it's exactly what you said. It's society telling you what you should be doing. Like they talk about the doctor who's making 300,000. They're talking about the
Mm-hmm.
lawyer who is making 400,000. You're talking about someone working a 9 to 5 and they're getting by in high class, middle class,
Yep.
and they're never talking about the guy who didn't go to college and he's making 10 times the amount of anyone on that
Mm-hmm.
list. So it's just like you gotta look like I think I'm excited. The most thing I'm excited about is when I have kids is showing them the opportunities that are out there that I wasn't
Mm,
shown by anyone. Like it's not my parents' fault because it's society's fault. You
yeah,
don't hear about these people that don't go to school and they do these crazy, they change the world.
literally, it's crazy, and I think something we learned too. Um, I didn't know Steve Jobs didn't go to college until I got
Mhm.
older. Like you never glamorize those things. It's like he is this amazing person, or Bill Gates is this amazing person, but
Yeah.
you don't know that they have not spent 4 years in one place, in classes, and it's so really amazing too. And my next question to build upon that, I have a lot of friends who are medical majors and science majors, biologies. And something that they always say is freshman year going into these classes, these are weed out classes, right?
Mhm.
Purposely to make, you break or whatever and see, hey, if you really want medical school, this class will differentiate you from the pack who are just doing it to say they want to do it and who really, really want to be a doctor. I'm just really curious. When do you determine, or how did you determine if this was just a challenge that I need to go through because this is a different position for me and maybe I just need to push through this challenge, or this is not for me and I shouldn't continue? How do you differentiate me quitting or drifting to something that is the best for me?
That's a good question.
Come on now.
That's really good. So, I would say the first few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was going to be a challenge.
Mm.
I saw the process exactly. Like I knew that there's 300 kids in the lecture hall with you for one section. Like
Yeah.
they're not all making it to graduation. Like it's the reality. So I'm like, yeah, some kids are gonna get weeded out. I was like, no chance that's me. Like, nah,
Mm.
I'm in it. First test comes back, not what I expected. Second test
I
comes
don't think
back.
our first test was good for
Yeah,
anybody.
it's like, come on. I spent so much time studying. I think when you find out that you don't enjoy the process,
Ooh,
because
that's good, Matt.
fail, yeah, failing, it's going to come with no matter what you do. If you're pushing yourself properly, you're going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't want to wake up the next day and go harder, you don't enjoy the process.
Mm.
It's not a passion. So then I would say, yes, it does look like quitting, but I would say reframe it of stepping away and kind of having
Mm.
that inflection point of making a change is super important. And I'm so glad that I made this decision at the time that I did, because if I waited till like junior year,
It's too
everything
late.
would be different. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. And I was just really curious because I think so a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people, I am in a position sometimes where I'm like, I don't want to say no.
Mhm.
Or I don't want to, but it's like, Anaya, this is not fulfilling to you. This feels like an obligation, but it's about letting people down. It's about being afraid to go to your parents. It's about not wanting to say no to that employer. And so for those who are listening, I think Matt's story in this point is just an encouragement for you all. If you feel like you don't want to wake up to do it, let it go, because there's so much more out there. And I think we get caught up in, like you said, by junior year it's too late. Technically, it's really not too late. You have your whole life ahead to finish the undergraduate degree, but we place ourselves within that frame of expectation within 4 years because that's when we think, hey, you're definite to supposed to finish your bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
That's good, bro. That's really good.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So we get here, right? We know that this is what we want to do. We're at Temple University. You talked about a lot of volunteer experience, but something you left out was the Birds Banter podcast.
Mhm.
Talk to me about just starting that. Because you started a podcast before, way before me, way before Joshua. And I feel like especially it wasn't really popular among college students. So
Yeah.
what prompted you to do this? Why did you start it? Tell me the mindset behind the podcast.
Yeah. So I started in the dorm room at Pitt freshman year. It was the fall of 2018.
You started at Pitt? Oh, you
Yeah.
were, bro, you knew you wanted to be in sports.
Yeah, that was like once I got that rolling, I was like, I love talking about this every day. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable. So that kind of impacted the decision for sure. But it was this fall after the Eagles Super Bowl, so fandom was at an all-time high.
Mm.
So for those, it's not available anymore. I mean, you can find it, but there's nothing released. So it's called the Birds Banter podcast. It was an Eagles podcast of me just kind of taking a different spin on sports media. A lot of people go on and they'd be like, oh, like for instance, now like Jalen Hurts is going to crush Tom Brady this Sunday. Like we're going to the Super Bowl. Like that's what people do in sports media. And me, I'd be like, okay, like look at the stats, kind of analyze everything, and kind of take more of a level approach to things, show the positives, show the negatives, just so it's more
Mm,
enjoyable for people to listen to and actually learn from it.
mm.
So it was fun. I had it rolling for about 3 years, and it was good. I got an opportunity to Carson Wentz, the former Eagles quarterback, ran a charity event at the Philly Stadium. It was a softball event.
Mm.
Got the chance to be a media credential member
I
at
didn't
the
know
event.
that. How was that
Yeah,
experience?
it was cool. Got to meet a few of the players. Got to hear Carson speak at a press conference.
Mm,
Did a live podcast there. So did that. Got to speak to some amazing people. Eagles running back Boston Scott was on my podcast. A few Eagles media members. So it was just a fun process of like taking my fandom to the next level. So
hmm That's good, and I think that for me, I think of always that's when I met you. I met
mhm,
you when you had Birds Banter,
yeah.
right? And we're gonna talk more about what you've done. But then you figured out what you wanted to do. You had Birds Banter, you had media and experience and learned to talk about things, and then opportunity came about where you found Joshua's Agent Academy.
Hmm.
We all took the Agent Academy, and luckily we were just all paired together and we stood out within these cohorts to really work for him. I'm curious, what is the, because we can talk so much about scouting and what you're doing on that side, and Matt's on the scouting side with Rodney, Daniel, EJ, Joshua, etc. And they're doing their things with GSA and scouting guys and the NFL draft process. But so far, what is, if you can just put this all in a big picture from the experience we've had for a year, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from this experience?
Hmm. Another great question. Ooh, so I would say that, hmm, it's good. So I would say going into it,
hmm
I believe that being a sports agent was this far-fetched goal. And then
Mm,
going through this year plus with him, it's shown me that it's more achievable than I thought. And as long as you put in the work and show a willingness to learn every day, then you can definitely make an impact.
that's good.
Thank you.
Ooh, that's good. Okay. And then for those who, because I don't want to spend too much time with this, because this is a little part of you, but for those who are listening, right? Let's say they want to be an agent. Let's say they want, and Joshua is kind of just like an unsung hero to me because we're not going to be in calls at a Wasserman. We're not going to be in calls at the CAA. We're not going to be in calls. We can't get that in-depth experience anywhere. Where you're an intern, you're literally an intern. And
Mhm.
so appreciating Joshua for bringing us in on the opportunity. For those who may not have the opportunity to be at a GSA, but let's say they're at a CAA, let's say they're at a Wasserman and they want to be an agent, but they're trying to figure out, how can I get an in-depth feel? How can I really take gems away from this experience? What would your advice be? Or how can people improve without the opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different experience being at a big firm because, like you said, you're not being on all the team calls. You're probably not talking to the players like we do. Like just a couple weeks ago, Josh and I took a trip to go watch three of our clients, and then like
Right.
met up with all of them after the game. Like that's not happening if you're working for Athletes First. Like you're not
Mm-hmm.
just going up to, I don't know, like Micah Parsons after the game, be like, "Yo, what's up?" Like, no. So, um, I would say if you want to go that route, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, if I didn't know who Joshua was, I'd be knocking on the doors of those big agencies because
Right.
that's what I would expect. Like, that's how you get in. So I would say if you're in that situation, just try to show as much value as possible. Like, if you're just doing paperwork for a client, do that to the best of your ability and then ask for more. And then if you can show
Mm,
you can handle more, it's going to take time, but eventually you'll move up.
that's good. And then also, just a quick question, because you guys are on the scouting side, you're watching people, you're learning how to recruit, you're learning how to understand film better, you're learning how to talk to people better, you're learning how to negotiate, talk to teams, all these different things. Let's say they don't get a GSA, let's say they don't get SCA or Wasserman. How can they still improve on their own time? What are some things that you can apply from what you do every day with Rodney and the guys to what you can do without them?
Yeah, so this is a question that I was asking people trying to get into the industry
Mm,
because I wanted to do exactly that and find these opportunities. And an answer that a lot of football people would tell me is be a student of the game. And I never really
mm,
understood what that meant until now, where I'm watching football almost every single day. Um,
mm,
it's like it takes practice. You got to watch and you got to learn what to watch for. Like it's one of those things, like if you're not watching the game properly, then you're not getting anything
Mm.
out of it. So we have a connection to a very good scout on Twitter. His name's Ryan Roberts. I actually hired him in the fall to get on weekly calls with me and show me how to
Get
scout
out,
football.
Matt. Really?
Yeah.
That's good. That's initiative though.
Yeah, and it taught me, so even we did it for like probably like 8 weeks or something, and it taught
That's
me
great.
like more than I would ever know in like 3 years of just knowing watching football. So it's just like
Wow.
doing what, like, find opportunities. Like, he's not advertising, oh, I want to like coach these kids on Twitter. I'm like, send a DM and just find opportunities out there.
Mm, that's really good. And so, for anybody listening, I think really that's one of those things where bet on yourself and reach out. Like Matt said, he's not offering the opportunity, but you never know what people will be open to doing until
Mhm.
you ask them. The worst you can get is a no. Moving forward, you go to the next opportunity. Simple as that. We have YouTube. We have so many resources to figure things out. That's really good. Now, you came onto the team, and something that we've been doing, I think that's really different with any other team is we push each other. We all
Mhm.
push each other in different ways, but we're all good at different things. And so when Joshua had you on his podcast, I'm just listening, and I discovered your morning routine. We all have different things in the morning. So like my morning routine, it was bland. It was like I wake up at 5 a.m., work out. I'm gonna go probably listen to a podcast, take a shower, eat, and I'm ready for the day.
Mhm.
You had something that was just so admirable to me, but it's even more just inspirational because we're college students and there are not a lot of people like us. Like, to be real, we're the 1%.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so talk about the morning routine. How did you form that in college? I want to know, when did it start? Was this a high school thing? Like, when did you get into the mindset like, hey, I need a morning routine, and tell us what you do?
Okay. Yeah, it's something to take a lot of pride in. Because I don't think I would be where I am, mindset wise, if it wasn't for this routine. So
Hmm.
I would say the inspiration of it started my senior year of high school. That's when I really like,
That's early,
yeah,
really.
I like was dialed in to fitness at that point. I would go to the gym
Okay.
twice a day. Um,
You was mad. What you ate? Did you play sports?
I played baseball,
Okay.
but then I got into lifting pretty seriously, and I would wake up at like 4:30, go to the gym,
That's
shower at the gym,
insane, bro.
and go to school right away. And I'd like pack all my meals. Like, I was doing like bodybuilding stuff, so I'd have like two breakfasts packed, two lunches packed.
Really?
Yeah. And then as soon as school let out, like it was senior year, so we had early release. So get out of school like an hour early. I'm going to the gym again. That time is with my friends. So it's like a little bit more of an enjoyable workout.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that was like when I first started like waking up early. And then
Wow.
throughout college, it was just kind of like I kind of just planned around my schedule,
Hmm.
whatever it was. Like if I had a class at 8, like get up like an hour and a half before to like do my thing, or if I had class at 9, like I would sleep in a little bit. So it wasn't until like this past year,
Hmm.
or maybe my junior year, like 2 years ago, that I would be like, okay, I need to be more consistent. Like if I
What
have a class,
sparked this? Before you tell us what it is, what was that inflection point for you? What changed?
I don't know.
Mm.
I think it was just, I think COVID. Um,
COVID did a lot. It did a lot for
yeah,
everybody.
I think it really taught me the lesson of, when COVID first shut us down
Yeah.
and there was nothing to do. Everybody's sitting there on their phones and doing what, like, nothing, right? There is still opportunity out there. There's opportunity to learn. There's opportunity to create. So I would try to develop the mindset of, if I'm sitting here on my phone, like on Instagram for a couple minutes,
Hmm.
like just mindlessly searching, I'm picking up a book and I'm starting to read. Or if I'm like not, if I'm laying on the couch, like get up and go for a walk, like little things
Yep.
like that, just to like create a better habit. Um, so I think that kind of taught me, like, there's no point of staying up on your phone, like whether you're talking to people or scrolling through Instagram, like just go to bed and then you're gonna wake up earlier. Like people always be like, oh, waking up is dreadful. Like, yeah, it's because you stay up till midnight. Like that's exactly why. So I think that kind of sparked it. And then I was inconsistent until this past like year and a half. So I really like locked in a good morning routine starting in September or August this past year.
Okay. I
And
thought you was doing it longer, bro. That's soon, but you have been disciplined in it though.
yeah, I
Hmm.
would say in the spring of 2021, got my years mixed up. Yeah, 2021 in the spring, I wake up at 5, and then in the fall, so I wake up at 4.
Mm.
So this past fall into now in the winter, I wake up first thing I do is go for a 2.5 mile walk. So it takes me about 45 minutes. I'm back home by like 5 a.m. And then after that, I'm mostly like stretching, just put on like either a podcast or like some calming music,
Mm-hmm.
just like kind of get my body right for the day. Cause like I lift a lot. So I got to make sure I'm like staying healthy with that. But it's also a time to like slow down, like maybe do a little bit of meditation. And then beyond that, it's just like I have time to put this thing away for an hour or two and just, get some work done, read my book, just stay away from distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way, when 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rolls around and the rest of the world is waking up, like I'm ready to go. Like I'm ready to attack it. Whereas everybody's
Yeah.
going to wake up groggy. Like I've already done everything that I needed to do for myself.
Mm. Mm. That's good. So, oh, there's so much we can unpack with this too, because I really, really started getting into it this year too. Like I would wake up early, but it would be inconsistent. And I
Mhm.
feel like this year I've just been on go, just waking up. But it helps for anybody listening. I swear it helps. And I know that a lot of people are going to be like, y'all crazy because y'all in college. A lot of people cannot relate to doing that in their college days. But I promise you, by 8 a.m., like Matt said, you will have completed dang near majority of your tasks.
Mhm.
And if not, it's probably because you have a meeting at this time, or you have something to do that's at a scheduled time. It's like a game changer. But I do want to ask you, what's the difference? Hmm. First question: we're both in college, and I don't know about you, but I've experienced individuals and my friends and people close to me like, I want to work out with you.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go work out. What time you wake up, Anaya? 5. I ain't doing that. You think you can wait to 8? No, like I'm not waiting until 8. And there are a lot of my friends too. Like, you so lame. You don't want to come out tonight? No, because I gotta wake up tomorrow, and I just don't feel like it. Or you waking up that early? You're crazy. What have you had these experiences? And if
Same thing.
same thing, okay, cool. So if so, how do you deal with it? And do you what is the balance between you knowing to keep these people in your life because of their ignorance, or being like, this is not a person I want to keep in my life because of your ignorance? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, Simple answer, I don't care. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I came to a realization about 2 years ago of like my goals are non-negotiable. If
Mm.
I want to do something, like nothing's holding me back.
Yes,
So
man.
if someone comes in and they're like, hey, like you're crazy, like it happens almost every time I tell someone that like that's what I
Really?
do, or like
Every time.
yeah, it doesn't even have to be the morning routine. Like, okay, this is what I do for lifting, or like this is what I do for work. Like, they're just like, what are you doing? Like, why? And it's like it just got to the point where I'm like, I don't even need to tell people anymore because like I
Yes.
don't need validation. Like, I know that I'm doing the right thing. So it's like your doubt like doesn't do anything to me. So um if someone does say something negative like that, if they're real and like I want to keep them in my life, like I know it. So like
Mm.
I'll be like, you got to understand this. Like I'm not going out tonight, or like we can't do this. Like you got to wake up earlier if you want to do this with me. Stuff like that. But if they're completely against it, then like see you. you
Yeah,
know?
you do know the difference between those friends, because I have
Yeah.
friends too, and I'll just be 100. Like, since I started doing it, I've had to remove people from my life.
Mhm.
Like, if I feel like you always have a negative comment about me going to be productive, like, what does that do for you? And it's
Yeah.
also one of those things where the people who complain the most are the people who swipe up on your stories or be like, man, I'm trying to get at GSA with you. Or
Mhm.
how are you in that position? But it's like you're not ready to do what it takes.
Yeah.
And I think you see the difference between your real friends, because those are like, and you really don't want to go out with us, or man, you really don't want to go out. Okay. But they're not going to push you because they know what your values are and they respect it. And I think that's the difference. But my next question for you, because I have seen you just push me, and now you need to start investing. You need to start thinking about this more and little things like that.
Mhm.
How do you know, for those people who are still your friends and you know that they're real, the difference between when you need to lead and push them, or follow and allow them to discover this motivation or this discipline on their own? How do you know when you're being too hard, and how do you know when you need to just, step back?
Um, it's a good question. I think uh you kind of get the sense of like where people's mindset is just from
Hmm.
talking to them. Like from my experience and like the way I am, my first conversation with somebody, I can generally tell like, is this someone that I would like to like work with and push them like we do to each other, or is it someone that's just like an acquaintance, or is it someone that like you got to go?
Right.
So it's pretty simple. Like I feel like everybody has that trait. Like they can figure it out. You just gotta like actually have the guts to like carry that out and like
Hmm.
find someone's role in life. Um, I would say, and then it takes time of getting to know them better, getting a little bit more comfortable with them, and then seeing like, okay, where someone might be lacking in life,
Right.
someone might be having a goal that they're just not achieving. Like if you told me like, dang, like I want to read every day, but then I'm seeing you not reading, then like, yo, what are you doing? So,
Hmm.
but if it's like someone that's like they never read before, like, oh, I would like to read, but like maybe the times I've read, like I don't know if the right book is, and they'd never do it. And I'm like, you really never wanted to do it. Like you know, like you're saying you're just blowing
Mm,
smoke. So I
that's
think
good
it's
too.
yeah, and you can't help everyone. I think that's something that I really saw from like starting my own podcast, the new
That's
one.
something I struggle with too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Because
like
like
not helping everyone because you just want people to see that this is a game changer. And if
yeah,
you did it, you would be 10 times closer to your goals. And I swear you would be just as happy about
yeah,
where you are as where I am.
mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's like the resources are out there. Like if someone's listening to this, they're going to get some sort of value from us,
Hmm.
like one way or another. But if nobody listens to it, it's like, yeah, like you want people to listen to your podcast, 100%. Like I'm in that space as well. Like I understand that. But if someone's like, ah, maybe I'm not going to listen to it, like you're missing out. Like
Honestly.
there's gonna be other people that are listening to it and they're gonna have the benefits. So like you either you sink or you swim. So
Yes. Okay. And okay, so I was prepared for this podcast. It's so funny because I texted y'all yesterday. This
mm-hmm.
book came in the mail yesterday. For those who are listening on audio, it's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Master your mind and defy the odds. You love David Goggins.
Well,
You love him. And so talk to me because I know he's an inspiration and a role model for you, and just one of those people who is like keep you going and
mhm.
somebody you kind of like look after. Talk to me about just your favorite people and why. So it can just be David Goggins. Why do you have this attraction to his content, attraction to his drive, and attraction to who he is? And how does that shape you into who you are today?
Mhm. I would say there's two people in these kind of spaces I look to the most. First being David Goggins. I think he just exemplifies the perfect mindset. I mean, not everybody. Once you read the book and once other people like start looking at like it's not achievable for and sustainable for most people. Like he is the toughest person that I think
He's
our
yeah,
world has ever
he's
seen.
hardcore, bro.
Yeah. He it's crazy. So his story is just incredible. And I don't think a lot of people can get to that level, but
Hmm.
just finding those ways to get more mentally strong and push yourself to limits that you previously didn't think were capable of. So I think that's what really draws me to him. It's being so he is a Navy SEAL, and his whole thing being a Navy SEAL was he wants to take souls. He talks about in his book, but basically all these people that doubt him or are looking to see him fail, he's going to do something that's going to take their soul, and it's going to be like if you were going to take my soul, I'd be like, oh, Anaya, like your podcast isn't that great. Like nobody's going to listen to it, and
Yep.
you're going to go and get an amazing guest, and you're going to take my soul, and you're going to be like, oh, I just got this
And back
killer
at you.
guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then now, like that I see it, I'm like, dang, like you got me. So it's like it's a thing, it's a mentality like that, like every day, like, okay, whose soul am I gonna take and who am I gonna, prove
Mm.
wrong? Um, the next person I would say is Grant Cardone. He is a business tycoon,
This is
sale.
10X, right? The
Yes,
10X guy?
yes.
Okay. I got to
Yeah,
read that book. That's on my list.
good. Yeah, it's a good one. He's a sales expert, real estate mogul. So big business guy, but he has a great mindset as well. We talk about
Hmm.
taking action, and another great story came from nothing and turned into be one of the most influential people in the world right now. So just these stories that I can't really relate to the upbringing of them because I didn't
Right.
have a rough childhood. But understanding that I have opportunity in front of me, more opportunity than they did because they came from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
How can I adapt this mindset to go even further?
Right. That's good. Yeah. So I'm excited to read this book because Matt and then Joshua acts like this is the, I don't know. He didn't hype this up just as much as Shoe Dog, but he's like, bro, this got me on goal. I'm about to go run 6 miles.
It's
So
10 times better than Shoe Dog in my opinion.
really,
I
okay.
love Shoe Dog, but you
Ooh,
can't beat
I'm
Aaron.
ready to read it. I'm trying to finish Atomic Habits right now, which is
Yeah.
what Matt and I are reading. Well, Matt just finished, but reading that too. So if you guys need some good reads, hit us up, okay? Because
Mhm.
our team is just always reading. And I want to talk about success. This is you. So we talked about a lot of transitioning from finding passions to figuring out what we want to do and progress and purpose. And it was just one day when we were talking to you, was like, I'm going to end Birds Banner. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, like I'm going to start a new podcast. And I was like, what is it going to be about? And it's about success. This is admirable to me. But as a listener, and for those listening, please do go tune into Matt's podcast called Define Success Podcast on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, streaming, etc. So definitely tune in. And then what's the IG handle?
Define success underscore pod.
Tune in, and he's doing the Win the Day challenge. You're a little late if you're tuning in by now, but I'm sure you're gonna do another one. So
Yeah.
definitely tune in and listen to Matt's podcast. It's super inspirational, and I think you will find lots of motivation in it within his own Monday episodes, but also the guests he brings on. I started listening. I was super hyped for you to release it too. And I had texted Joshua one day, like, this is Matt's purpose.
Mm.
Like, there's just a different type of excitement in your tone. You're more eager to put it out. I mean, the content is better for this podcast. Like, you are on it every single day. And
Mm.
I just can relate because of You're Wrong, Sir. Like, when you're passionate, you make sure you release the podcast on time. You make sure you drop the content. And I could just hear it in your voice how happy you were. So I think my first question with this is, why did you start it? Like, why transition away from the sports podcast and start this one?
Yeah. So about 2 years ago, had a big mindset change and started more into self improvement, self development, reading books, listening to podcasts, working out more, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started kind of adapting new philosophies and kind of learning about what the greatest people in our society have done.
Right.
Um, so that kind of sparked me, okay, like this is what I can incorporate to my life. This is what I can teach people. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was just consuming a ton of stuff and trying to learn as much as possible, and all noted, all at a low cost. Like a book is cheap, a podcast
It's
is
cheap,
free.
bruh.
Yeah,
Podcasts are free. I
YouTube
keep
is
telling
free.
people it's the cheapest knowledge out there.
Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of just building in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
like for 2 years, like I was just building up like my mindset, my experiences, investments, all that different stuff. And it came to a point where I was in LA in May this past year, and I was walking on Rodeo Drive. So for those who don't know, it's this long road of just all the designer stores, like everything
Yep.
imaginable. And it's these high rollers walking around, like nice cars going by,
All the
people.
cars, yes.
Yeah, there's people wearing outfits that are worth thousands of dollars, and it's just like, dang, like this is what we see as success. And
Mm,
people walking around like wearing, designer shoes and all this jewelry, like they think that they're successful, and they could be because they got money, obviously. But this is what we see. We see the material possessions, and we think, dang, these people are successful. They can walk into the store and buy anything that they want without looking at the price tag. That is
mm-hmm.
success. And I was thinking to myself, like, I don't think that's right. So for the
I
rest of
did
this
not know
vacation,
that this was the inspiration, bro. I
yeah,
love this.
the rest of the vacation, I was thinking to myself, like, what does success mean to me? And it took me all summer to like think of the answer.
What
But
does
as
it mean to you?
I don't even know yet. I'm like
Mm,
getting closer. But like when I host a podcast with somebody, I always ask them like, how do you define success? And everybody
yeah.
has an answer. But like I still haven't, all this time, I still haven't perfected my definition because it's so
Whoa.
complex. But throughout this struggle in my mind of like trying to figure out what it is to me, I was like, dang, like this is a good dialogue, like just in my head. Like there's people that will talk about this and inspire
Mm-hmm.
people. I can do it myself.
Yeah. Especially
But
because a lot of people feel as if they have the answer.
yeah,
Like a lot of people know what they think success is, but I think success also changes.
yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
So I was like, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to bring on anybody and everybody that I see
What you
successful.
done, bro? You got you, Matt. Y'all tune in. I gotta hype you real quick. Matt has some of these same guests as Lewis House.
Yeah.
Okay, so get to it.
the
Tune
the
in.
one the one on Wednesday was another very proud one. He was on Joe Rogan twice, so I was like,
You
I'm getting
killing
in
it.
there.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this too because a lot of people ask me like, how did you get so and so on? And how did you get this on? How what's that gratifying moment when you get that yes? Just from somebody who's on a podcast that you're trying to get to the level of. What does that mean for you? And what is your mindset going into it?
It's almost surreal. So like probably similar to you, I just go on, I find like these influential people. If I'm trying to find new people, I look at like
Mm-hmm.
what podcasts are doing, find all these people, make a list, send a message on Instagram.
Literally, I've been doing
Yeah.
like 5 a day, and then
Yeah,
if I get a response, I don't. If I do, I do.
exactly. It's all it is. And a lot of these people that I'm targeting, you're probably the same. They regard themselves as speakers. So in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, I'm like, okay, they'll probably say yes because they want to just get their message out there any way possible.
Mm,
So when I get a response, it's like it's amazing. Like I'm happy about it, but it's like they're probably saying yes to everything. So I'm like, okay, like this is cool, but like it's not like special yet. Like we'll see how the
right, right.
conversation goes. And then some of the most rewarding conversations that I have are
Mm-hmm.
after we hit stop recording. And they say, like,
Ah,
I love what you're doing. Like,
yes.
please reach out to me if you need, like, it's just, it validates it because it's not just like, I'm going to come on this podcast, chop it up for 30 minutes. I'm out of there. They're like,
Yeah.
I want to support this kid. So like, that's probably the best part of it.
That's so good. And I just got the book in the mail too yesterday.
Oh,
How
good,
money
good.
works? Yes.
Mhm.
So tune in, y'all. I'm getting free books from Matt's podcast. Like I'm lit. But I want to just know. So we talked about wanting to be what's the goal is to be an agent, but you also want to get your law degree.
Mhm.
Okay. Birds banter is what we think will encompass and help you get to that and allow people within the sports industry to take you more serious and to
Mhm.
be more credible. Like, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Somebody looks up Matt Lupi now, it's all about motivation.
Yeah.
It's all about success. Um, I I want to know, and just an encouragement for everybody, why did you feel as if it was okay to dive away from sports and start a podcast that had nothing to do with it, where you're
Mhm.
not putting out something that has something to do with sports every single week, but that still you feel as if that still contributes to your Omega plan, which is being an agent and also being a lawyer?
Because I think sports doesn't just define me. I don't think
Hmm.
I'm just going to be a sports agent. I'm going to own businesses. I'm going to own property, different things. Like I'm going to be working with some of the most influential people in the world,
Right,
I
right.
think. So um, it's when people look me up, I don't want it to just be like I'm posting a picture with an athlete. Like I want them to see like all aspects of me. So I'm like, this is important for me. And I think I see it as almost an obligation of me being 21 years old and having this kind of mindset and these ideas to share and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that a lot of people our age are not doing the same thing. They
Yes.
need to know. And if they see someone a similar age, similar situation doing it, they're going to be inspired. So I feel like it was an obligation for me to go inspire others.
That's good because I've always I think sometimes a lot of people put us in box,
Hmm.
right? And even with me starting You're Wrong Sir, it's like, oh, you want to be a sports broadcaster? Never said that. Oh, you want to do play by play? I never said that. You know, and it's just those little things where people start to categorize you simply because of something that they see you do or
Hmm.
what season you're in. So, like Birds Banter was a season.
Yep.
And now the season can be, oh, Matt just wants to go write a book and be an author. And I would never think he wants to be a sports agent. And so I think for me, just this is an encouragement for my listeners to understand that like never ever define somebody else's dream and never ever assume what their dream is because you never know what this alpha thing that they're doing right now can be doing to contribute to whatever their omega plan is. Lastly, who is somebody we want to see on you want to see on Your Wrong Sir, but
Mm,
you have to help me get them on.
okay. Um, so I like how you have like the sports approach to it. So I'm trying to think like sports wise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Eagles fans a little bit biased, but I'm gonna say Brian Dawkins.
Who was that?
Oh no. Okay, one of the best safeties of all time.
Okay, I'm not the football girl.
Yeah, yeah. But he's a little bit of an inspiration for a lot of people, especially like Eagles fans and everything, because he obviously had a great playing career, but later in his career and after, he came out saying that he struggled with mental health and contemplated suicide multiple times in his playing career when he's making millions and
That's good.
like being one of the best players on the field. Um, so I think having a conversation with somebody who's gone through it, like he's done speaking engagements, he's open about it, he's written a book. I think that'd be an awesome conversation. So
okay, y'all listening, all my listeners, hold Matt to it. We're gonna have Brian Dawkins on here. That is gonna be one of my goals for the end of the year. So we're gonna see if we make it happen. But man, that's all I have for you. Thank you, Matt, for hopping on. I really, really appreciate you. And this is my encouragement. Everybody, please go listen to the Define Success podcast. Follow Matt Lupi, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, etc. I hope this episode was fruitful for you all. But that's all I got. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we out.